Hi everyone, I'm back to do an eyeshadow palette video. I haven't done one of these in a really long time. The last time I filmed it was definitely well over like a month ago at this point, and I've had several setbacks. Jackson's pancreatitis is slowly starting to get better. I think he's still having issues with getting his potassium to stabilize. I feel like I'm still fighting with that, so we're still not through it yet. He's still not eating enough, so I still do have to supplementally feed him, but we're getting through it. So in the meantime, this arrived well over a week ago, so I am already behind schedule with filming with this beautiful palette. I swore this time I'd be on time because I was so excited to get my hands on it, and I was so excited the day it arrived, and then Jackson crashed. So I was just watching Teresa Is Dead's new video, and oh my gosh, I'm so glad that she's feeling better. That must have been so scary, but I really related to the part where she was like, I had everything planned out and then life happened, and I'm never planning anything ever again. Like, I felt that in my soul. I feel like every time I get super hyped up and I start setting my expectations for myself really high, something happens. Here is what it looks like on the inside. We have these beautiful colors. Now, I know I've been recently doing a lot of bluer looks, but what's another blue look, right? I don't think anybody is going to complain. I did use a new primer. I am going to be filming my Sephora haul video right after this. Okay, so I'm going to start off with this semi-dense synthetic brush because I want to do outer corner stuff. So I'm going to start off with this shade right here. Last time when I was using Remembrance, I noticed that even if it was metallic or matte, it still kind of worked in any position on the eye. So I'm just gonna use this shade that is a little bit more metallic. I'm still gonna go ahead and drop it in the outer corner. You can see it catches the light as I turn my head, but from the front, you can see the darker cast that it has. Okay, I'm gonna take a smaller brush, which I'm gonna try using this new cinch brush. I got this during their anniversary sale. Okay, whoa, this cinch brush is pretty cool. It picks up so much. I think I put on a little too much. If I like it, and if it works for picking up metallics the way I hope it does, I'm gonna like wait for another sale, and I'll go back and buy a couple more of these. I'm going to use a slightly more diffuse brush. We'll see what happens. I think I'm going to go ahead and use this shade right here. This appears to be more matte, and it has a very slight drop of warmth to it, so it doesn't read as cool as the other shades in this palette does. So I think it'll be good to blend out this green, and this is more of like a, you know, a very desaturated kind of grungy olive green, and it can be, I think you could read this green as cool or warm, so I'm gonna opt to use this shade to blend it out. Doing so, I think it's gonna pull the green more warm. This matte shadow, it is the individual particle size of the pigment is very finely milled. It's like microscopic sized pollen blowing off the leaves, which if you live in North Carolina, you know is pollen season right now. I'm glad I don't have pollen to worry about, but for all of my allergic friends, I'm very sorry. I'm going to go into this green here, which is right next to the first shade I used. I want to see if they're different. That would be nice to find out. Because I noticed with Remembrance, I think my biggest criticism of that palette was just the sheer number of redundant tones, which it's not uncommon, but like, I mean, you pay so much money. I don't want my shades to look identical next to each other. Okay, so this reads a little bit more saturated, and it is a little bit lighter, and it has distinctly more yellow in it. Especially when it catches the light, I can see the difference that this has a lot more yellow to it. Kind of more like a leafy green. Kind of want to darken it up just a little bit. The red tones in the neutral and then the green are mixing to create a little bit of mud, but that is kind of the L that you take when you want to use those two shades together. It's going to get a little bit murky, but other than that, I think it looks okay. So I really want to go into this shade right here. It's a desaturated pale gold, such a pretty shade. This is a pretty standard shimmer placement I like to do, so technique-wise, this is not going to be like a groundbreaking look. I'm going to go ahead and take the same shade on the lower lash line. I want to go for something that is really glittery without much base to it, which is not something you're going to find in a Byredo palette, so I will go ahead and go into a different palette for that. I have this highlighter from Judy Doll, but I think it will double great as a single shadow as well. I feel like I would have rather used something with a little bit more of a gold undertone to it, because the only thing when you're using pure white sparkles is that they can cause your eye look to turn a little bit milky. This is going to be my eye look done. A little bit muddy, but me trying to remember how to apply makeup after trying to deal with my cat. Okay, I'm going to go off camera. I'll finish off my face with makeup and I'll be back. Okay, this is going to be my finished look. I think everything looks okay. My bangs are very greasy. My bangs always need to be washed a good like 48 to 72 hours before the rest of my hair, so unfortunately we're just dealing with my crummy bangs. I don't know which doe lashes I used. I think it's the repellent ones. I don't want to get demonetized, but you can find it. It has the word repellent in the name. I think that's what it is, but you know, I keep them in here and so I lose the packaging. I don't know what they are after a long enough time. I did use a tiny little bit of eyeliner because when I have false lashes on, I feel like it just kind of looks a little bit incomplete unless I continue my lash line a little bit. I did use my Hello Kitty Endless Silky Eye Pen. This is, I believe, in the shade London Fog, and this is from Pixie. For blush, I used my Nemming blush in the shade Bagel. As you can see, this is a very kind of warm toned beige. On top of that, oldie but a goodie, and it is Golden Mint from Becca. Sorry, I'm trying to like make it so that you can actually see the product. And then just a little bit of bronzer around the perimeter of my face. So I just used this bronzer in the corner of my Hourglass palette. And then for my lips, after I used lip liner, I got this gift with purchase kind of deluxe sample size lip from Girl Cult in my Girl Cult order. I'm not sure what formula or shade this is, but it is definitely more of a sheer matte color, and I feel like we have seen some Western brands try to do that sheer matte formula, but I feel like they never can pull it off as well as Asian brands can, just like my 2 cents. I think Armani Beauty has one, but it's like Asia exclusive. I mean, I wouldn't know where to find it. I don't know where it is. This is going to be look number 1, and I'll move on to look number 2. You'll see that in a few seconds. Hi everyone, I'm back to do look number 2. Now, I don't know why, but I have like a red rash kind of right up here. It is somewhat covered up by the eye primer I'm using today, which is the Rare Beauty eye primer you see here. For today's look, I really wanted to try using the purple tone in this shade. There's one purple tone in particular that really interested me, and I wanted to see if I could pair it with this gloss here. So I am going to start off with this slate shade down here. And I'm going to start just placing this shadow. I don't really need to be too precise with this shadow because this is going to be the base shadow. I am going to deepen things up on top of it. Okay, and then on top of that, I am going to go in with this dark shade here. Now, it does have a little bit of sparkle to it, so we'll see how it goes. I snapped my nail completely. Like, look at the difference. So I'm gonna apply this shade with my finger and see what happens. I am not good at using my opposite finger on my other eye though, so I'm going to switch to using a denser, flatter brush. I don't think this was the right brush to pick. I'm gonna switch to a dense brush that is a little bit fatter. And when applying these kinds of shades from the Byredo formula with a brush, you do want to be careful. Fallout is possible, so make sure you stamp on so that the initial pigment on the brush comes off and adheres to the eyelid without causing fallout, and then you can start blending. Okay, and then I am gonna go ahead and just use my finger to smooth out any uneven parts. I am going to take that same shimmery kind of purple and I'm going to use that on the outer corner of my lower lash line. And now I'm going to go into this shade right here. It looks kind of like a more shimmery version of the matte that I used earlier. And I'm going to use a more diffuse brush for it because I do want to kind of apply it broadly across the inner part of my eyelid. Applying it closer to the inner part of my eyelid may not have been a good idea because it's kind of making me look a little bit like a zombie. And as you can see, this coloration, this discoloration you see up here, that is not eyeshadow, that is the red of my mystery rash showing through the eyeshadow. That whole strip there that looks red. I don't know what I did either. I feel like the dark plum kind of got lost in the shuffle. I get over eager with all the shades I want to use, and then before I know it, my look kind of has turned a little bit muddy, so I do apologize. Next, I really want to try using this very sparkly shade up here. Oh, it has a bit of a darker lean to it than I expected. Okay, yeah, I could see this shade being really pretty on its own. As you can see, it does have a base to it, so it's not going to work for me on the inner corner. I'm going to go into the shade that's right next door, this shade here, that it does look like it's going to be light enough to use on my inner corner. Ooh, this has a lot of pigmentation to it. And I think I'm going to go ahead and use a little bit of this kind of around my eyebrow arch area. Yeah, I really like how these shades are pretty malleable, so like if it doesn't feel like the blend is perfect, you can really go in with your fingertip and use the warmth of your fingertip to just kind of do some last finishing touches. Okay, so that is going to be this look complete. I think all I'm really missing is eyeliner, but I'm going to do eyeliner after I put on the lashes and mascara, so I'll do that off camera to save on time, and I will be right back with the finished makeup look. Okay, this is going to be my finished look. Here is everything all put together. As you can see, I had in mind a very cool overall makeup look because I really wanted to try out this new lip gloss that I just got, and so far I like it. I got a hive midway through filming right here, so oops. I have noticed in the past with Byredo that the looks tend to look better when you only use maybe like 2 to 3 shades, and here I am using like a dozen, which is like fine, but also it makes my looks run together a little bit. I also didn't like swatch the palette, so I feel like every time I put a shade on my eyelid I'm getting a surprise. I am just wearing doe lashes. As you can see, I put on some black liquid liner on the inner corner of my lower lash line and some wings in the outer corner. For my blush, I was like, initially I thought maybe I'd use a lilac blush, but then I remembered that I have this shade here from Kaleidos in the shade P09, and this shade, as you can see, was more or less the perfect match for this look. It's a very, very, very desaturated, cool pink, and so because of that, the gray that is in this blush really matches with the gray tones of my eyeshadow. For highlighter, I mostly stuck to using the lightest 2 shades in this Pillow Talk highlighter, which I have in the shade Light. For my contour, and also just as like I also use the powder in here to kind of set the inner part of my face. I use my Chocolate Wondershop palette, and then after I applied some lip liner, I used the Milk Odyssey gloss in the shade Voyage, and this was the one that I was really interested to try. As you can see, it is a blackened grape. That's how everything's looking. I'm gonna wrap up look number 2. Hope you guys enjoyed, and in a few seconds you guys will see look number 3. Okay, hi everyone, I am back to do look number 3. I do have my foundation on. I did put on my eyebrows. And I did, as you can see, put on a little bit of bronzer, just like a little bit. I'm gonna go ahead and get started. I did wash my hair and it's frizzy again, so. So when I was looking at the marketing images for the Byredo palette, because whenever luxury makeup brands release eyeshadows, I do like to see what kind of marketing looks they did, because frequently I do find the looks to be very, very interesting and inspiring. And I saw one look that was using the blues and I thought it was really, really pretty, so I kind of wanted to try it. So I'm going to first go in with this blue right here and then I'll kind of go from there. So I'm gonna try using this. I did put on the Fenty eye primer today to see how these shadows would behave with that. So as you can see, this looks to be a very satiny shade. You can see it does catch the light a little bit, but it's not overly like shiny, so it'll work really well. And I kind of wanted to like follow the structure of the look a little bit. So they had like put it in the outer corner, and then they had also put a little bit in the inner corner. Now I don't usually do dark shadows on my inner corner. I feel like I don't really have the eye shape for it, but I'll try it this time. And I will use a brush later. I just was thinking about using my finger to lay it down first, because I do find that Byredo's formulas are pretty finger friendly. Okay, so I've kind of mapped out a rough area of where the eyeshadow is going to go, and so far I am thinking that I do definitely really like this formula. It's just so easy to work with. So I'm gonna go in with a kind of fluffier brush now, and I'm just going to use this brush to start blending the edges of the blue. And I'm not really worried about the gap. I am gonna be putting a shade between that. And then I'm going to go in with a brush, and I do think my left eye could use a little bit more. And I do like how when I blend out this blue, I'm not getting any kind of dark or ashy kind of effect. It is blending out very nicely without the dark base turning any weird undertones. It's not making me look gray or bruised or dead, so I do really appreciate that. I do find sometimes, especially with darker satins and dark shimmers, that what you almost can't blend it out too much or else it's gonna look really strange. And I kind of screwed up the angle on my right eye a little bit, so I am trying to see if I can correct it. And I do have some bumps and stuff on my upper eyelid here that is kind of making the eyeshadow look a little bit patchy, because it's kind of catching onto those textured areas, so just ignore that. Okay, and then I am going to take this shade down here, which has a little bit, you can see it's a little bit more turquoise. I'm going to use this on my lower lash line. I definitely think I put on too much. Okay, that blew out a little bit more than I expected, but that's okay, I can work with it. I do think these two shades look a little bit too similar to each other on my eyelid. Okay, I wanted to keep it a little bit tighter to my lower lash line, not smoke it out as much, but I have to keep it symmetrical, so I'll have to build it up here too. I'm going to take a smaller brush. I need to stamp it more densely in a tighter area. So you can see with a tinier brush I'm going to be able to apply it precisely where I think I have a little bit of an uneven application. Okay, now I'm going to apply the middle shade. So I'm going to go into this shade. I'm going to go into this shade right here, and I think I can just use my finger and it should be fine. I'm just going to apply it pretty much all the way up. Oh yeah, that works really well. And at the top of my look, I am spreading it a little bit left and right, to help with blending the blue. So you can see that is what it looks like right now. It is so pretty. I'm going to go into another kind of denser brush, and I'm going to apply a second layer of shadow using a brush just to make sure I get a nice saturated layer. I was having to be very precise with my finger to not send it everywhere, so I was pressing very lightly, but now with the brush I can apply a second layer to make sure it's really built up, and I'm also going to use this brush to kind of very slowly blend the two shades together. And then I'm going to take this same shade on the lower lash line. Kind of like that. And I think you can see what I was mentioning about in my previous looks, how my first two looks were kind of messy. Honestly, if I wasn't so behind schedule and I didn't have so many things I wanted to film, I probably would have trashed the first look or the first two looks and redone it knowing what I know now, but I am, as you can probably tell in this video, I did go ahead and leave them in, but I'm gonna chop them down pretty significantly because they're not really that good. I do need something for my inner corners though, so for that I'm gonna try, I've already used this shade, but I'm gonna try using this on the inner corner just to see if it's light enough to do that with. And I will mention that these two yellow shades in the palette both look really, really similar, so again, I feel like there are some shade pairing redundancies in here. But I'll be honest, this is such a common thread with so many luxury brands and even high-end brands that it's like, is it even a real palette if it doesn't have redundancies at this point? My only problem when I do a dark inner corner is I still don't always know what to do with the inner corner, because now it looks like I have like a stripe going on, like light, dark, but at the same time if I don't have anything in the inner corner it looks really strange. And you can see that the blue on its own without any assistance actually blended out really nicely. Like, I'm not gonna go into another shade to blend out the blue. I think the blue blended by itself. Okay, so all that's left really is for me to maybe use some kind of like sparkly topper. I'm going to use the Phytosurgence shade in Orchid Overload, and you can just like dig your finger in, pick up a little bit, this right on top of the entire look. Okay, so I think this is going to be good for the final look. I actually really, really like it. I do feel like I would benefit from having something in the waterline, so I am going to go ahead and pull for something. I'm going to use the Kaleidos shade in the shade Limelight. I'm going to This is the look complete. So I'm going to be putting on some false lashes, obviously. I'm going to do the rest of my makeup and then I will be right back. This is going to be my finished look. I was looking at the marketing image for reference for what was done with the cheeks, and I did notice that for the eyeshadow they opted to not use the gold. They opted to just use a very slightly lighter shade of blue-gray, which not really to my taste, so I'm glad I didn't try and copy the look completely, or else I probably would have been a little bit dissatisfied. But I did notice that the model had basically like no blush on and just a lot of highlighter, and the lip was just empty with gloss. Now, I don't have supermodel facial proportions, so I can't just do bare gloss with nothing because my lips don't match my face. So I used lip liner as usual to overline my lips before putting lip gloss on, and I did not use a clear gloss. I used a tinted lip oil and I did not do no blush. I obviously have some blush on, so I'm gonna quickly go over what I have. So for blush, I just decided, because of the fact that the model didn't have any blush on, I thought that I would just kind of do a continuation of my bronzer, which I used the NARS Laguna, and I would just do brown blush. So I reached into my Bare Cheeks palette from Blend Bunny and I used this shade. And then right towards the back to meet with the bronzer, I used this shade. For highlighter, as you can see, I applied it pretty generously. I went in like a C shape all the way up even to the end of my eye look, did on my nose, my chin, so I'm very highlighted. And for that, I used this Maybelline Master Chrome highlighter. This is a relatively recent pickup. I just saw it and it was a shade I didn't have. I have the rose gold one, which is really, really pretty and very unique. I saw Pony use that one a lot, and so I ended up getting it. But then I saw that they had this shade available as well, so I got it too. I used my Dior Lip Glow Oil in the shade Mahogany. This is my favorite shade of the lip glow oil. That's this look. I really do like how it looks. I hope you guys enjoy this. I think this is definitely my best look so far. Looking at the palette, I still do have a couple shades left I haven't used. I think the next look is definitely going to be much more neutral. I will be signing off now and I will do look 4 tomorrow, so you'll see that in a couple seconds. Hi everyone, welcome to look number 4. I believe it's look number 4. I think I can count. I really wanted to use this shade up here, such a beautiful foggy shade. It reminds me of Moon Lily from Terra Moons. I'm just gonna use my finger because these shades are super finger friendly. I really liked how the shadows wore and felt on top of the Fenty Beauty eye primer yesterday, so I'm just gonna go. I used the Fenty Beauty eye primer again today. I do have a pimple right up here. I concealed most of it with concealer, so if you see a little bit of a bump in texture here, that's just pimple, and I poked it and now it looks worse. Yeah, this is such a beautiful shade of like a light denim blue. Not something you see every day. And I do personally find that if you're the kind of person who really likes to like use your fingers to paint your eyeshadows on, then you would really enjoy Byredo's formula, because that is probably the best way to apply any of their non-matte shadows. I really want to try using this shade right here on like the outer half of my eyelid. It has a slight glow to it, like it's like a satin, you see that? So this look is going to look very like soft and almost foggy. I'm gonna switch to my pinky finger for my left hand just because the nail is shorter. I love having longer nails, but then you can't use eyeshadow as effectively, so I'm always very conflicted on what to do. This shade I could use all over the eyelid as a single shadow. Would be really pretty. Do you see how I'm able to blend it with just my fingers? I'm gonna try and push the eyeshadow out here just a little bit more so that my eyelids match. Okay, I'm going to switch to using a brush now so that I can blend it out better. So pretty. I really like how that looks. Now, I really wanted to incorporate this shade here somehow, but I wonder if I would be better served using that with the other shades I haven't used yet tomorrow. I'm not sure. Well, actually, I think it'd be better because I was thinking about using this more rose tone shade because I haven't used it yet, but actually I don't know if that would work. I haven't used this shade yet. This shade right here. I haven't used this shade yet, and the warm brown tones might go better with the brown that I chose to use. I kind of want to just like put this in the middle. Just adds a little bit of a highlight to the look. I need to start putting shadow on my lower lash line. That would be helpful. So I'm going to take a Rephr 26 and I'm going to use this shade down here on my lower lash line. This one was also kind of shimmery. I'm gonna go into the dark brown I used earlier, the outer half. I'm just gonna go into this shade right here. I've been using this on my inner corner a lot because it just works. If I was going to pull in a different palette, I think I would have just gone for maybe like a matte pastel blue. Okay, and then lastly, I am going to go into a little bit more of that blue I used initially. I want to make sure that it blends into the inner corner more smoothly. One more layer. And that is going to be this look complete. So simple, barely even really needed brushes. I absolutely love how this looks. Like I said, I have come to realize that these Byredo palettes are less of a large, instead of viewing it as like a large eyeshadow palette, I think I'm getting better results by just viewing it as a collection of shades that can be used in small batches. So like pretty much every single shade in this palette can work with any other shade in this palette, but limiting the number of shades you use is the key to making a look that doesn't look muddy. So this is definitely one of those palettes where it's like all of the shades cannot be used to create elaborate looks, but any of the shades will mix well with 1 to 2 of any of the other shades to make a simple but cohesive and easy look every time. So I am gonna still leave the first 2 looks in. I know they're gonna look kind of bad, so I'm gonna try and edit them down, but I kind of think it's interesting maybe for you, the viewer, it'd be interesting for you, the viewer, to kind of see how my eyeshadow looks improved when I was changing how I approached this palette. I think that'd be interesting. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish off the rest of my makeup. I think I'm just gonna do mascara today, which I know I'm nervous about, but I really want to try, and I'll be back. Okay, this is going to be my finished look. Just letting my hair down. It looks a little bit better today after I put my hair serum on. As you can see, I did just mascara. My go-to traditionally has been the Holika lash correcting volume, but I feel like YesStyle sometimes sends me dried out tubes and I don't like gambling. For my lips, I mostly went in with 2/4 New Black Cherry, but it ended up being a little bit too red. I really need to get New Ginger, like so bad. So I went over it in the middle a little bit with the Rose Tea from the Milk Tea Velvet line from Romand, just to add back in a little bit more brown. I still think it's clashing a little bit. So that is this look. I do have bronzer on. I use NARS Laguna. I think mine is finally starting to show some shrinkage, which I've had it for long enough, but like it still works though, so I don't know how much I care. But and then I set everything with my Kogendo Brightening Moisture Powder. And I'm going to move on to look number 5. And so for look number 5, I'm gonna mainly focus on using these 2 shades, and I'm hoping to still be able to bring in this shade somehow. We'll see. Thank you guys so much for watching so far. On to look number 5. Hi everyone, welcome to look number 5. This green right here. I was thinking I may use this for depth, I'm not sure, and then the shade right above it is another shade I haven't used yet. So I'm just aiming to make sure I use every single shade in this palette at least once. And my first green look, I felt like I didn't do a very good job of it, especially the outer corners got really muddy, so hopefully this can be kind of like my redemption or something like that. I used the Suku eye primer today, and I'll see how that works. I've been having pretty good luck with this palette so far. I think my favorite primer to use with this palette so far has been the Fenty one. But anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and, like with all of the other looks, I've been just really enjoying using my fingers. So as you can see, this one is a little bit more satin. And pretty much all of it transferred off my finger. So that is that shade of green. I like how it has a slight brown base to it, so when you blend it out, it is able to kind of create its own contour and depth. As you guys can probably deduce from me mentioning this several times in a row now, this palette is definitely really great for people who don't like to use very many eyeshadows in their look, especially if you just want a compendium of one and done shades. This palette definitely makes me extra bitter that I missed out on the Kalahari one. Unfortunately, there really is no way for me to feasibly get a hold of that again unless Byredo restocks it, which they definitely will never do that. Between like this palette and Remembrance, I kind of can grab the vibe of Kalahari, and I'm sure, I don't think Byredo, given their aesthetic, I don't think they're going to be releasing wildly different palettes. The very first palette they had with the creepy face on it was kind of their most bright one, but ever since then they've been much more toned down. So I think if you missed this one, or if you missed the last ones, I mean, just wait, there'll be more coming. So I haven't really used this shade in like a large capacity, and it being a little bit more green, it should work. I'm not gonna blend it into the green too much, and I stopped the green before the end of my eye so that the turquoise hopefully won't look too muddy, because I noticed when I blended the shades into each other a lot, they kind of got a little bit muddy looking. So I think if I just keep them more separated, I'll be able to use the shades that I want without there being problems. And then again, I'll just use my finger. And then I'm just using my fingers to apply a final even layer. So that's what the look looks like so far. It's really pretty. I actually really like how these two colors go together. So like ordinarily I would have brought the green all the way out and then put the turquoise on top. I think doing that would have muddied up this look a lot. So by keeping them separated. I think that helped a lot. So now I'm going to be going into this rosier toned shade right here. I haven't used this shade yet, so that's my primary reason for using it, but I also do think it will work with this look. So it has a pinky tone to it, but it has these icy blue tone reflex. So yeah, this works really well. And I am just gonna go ahead and sweep this all across the top of the look too. And this shade is a lot more sparkly. I should have used this shade in an earlier look. That was I feel like I had missed opportunities now. Okay, and then next I do want to use this shade here. Sorry, I like don't know why my camera doesn't like focusing on things, but I kind of just want to take it like right here just to bridge the gap between the green and the brown and the champagne. Yeah, that works really well. Such a pretty shade. I wish I had used this shade on its own in a look. Okay, and now I'm gonna go into a tiny brush for the lower lash line, and I'm going to use that same sparkly shade I used on my upper eyelids on my lower lash line. And then I'm going to go into my inner corner shade. Then I'm going to take the turquoise shade right out here. And then, last thing, I'm going to go into that green I used all over my eyelid to very gently blend out. And just add a little touch of green to the lower lash line. And I think I'm going to call that this look. This is the fifth and final look. I think I was able to incorporate more shades without it turning super muddy. I do really like how it looks. So I'm going to be off camera. I'll finish off the rest of my makeup and I'll be right back. So this is going to be my finished look. I am wearing false lashes because with eyeshadow this dark, my lashes wouldn't show. I do have a baby wing eyeliner on the ends of both my eyes. I also lined my inner corner of my lower lash line, and then I did also take it through my epicanthic fold, just the tiniest, thinnest little line on my inner corners just to add some extra pointiness. And lastly, I did take the liquid liner right along the base of my lashes, almost in my waterline, like between the edge, like between the base of my lashes and my waterline, right at that edge, I put some black liquid liner there, and I do really like to do that just to add some definition to my outer corner without having to use a waterline pencil. For my bronzer, I use my NARS Laguna bronzer. For blush, I use the Tarte Maneater Blush and Glow Cheek Plump in the shade Coral. This is not the satin one, this is the older one. I got this half off during Ulta 21 Days of Beauty. This is the Coral shade. As you can see, it is much more of a muted coral. I'd say it's a lot more like beigey browny than coral personally, and you can see that it really matches with the grungier olive green. And then for my highlighter, I finally reorganized my makeup such that I have ready and easy access to Revelations from Flower Nose. For my lips, I use lip liner. I started off my base with the Romand Lasting Lip Balm in Nougat Sand. This is 05. You can see here, based on the tube, it is just kind of a brown shade. And then to add a little bit more depth, I used a little bit of the Lee Member. Well, it's in Chinese, but it's 07 Lee Member, and it is a very, very pigmented, extremely pigmented glossy formula. I used just a little bit on the inside of my lips. I'm actually really looking forward to using this on its own because it is so grungy, so dark, black and brown. But I just wanted to use it on the center of my lips just for a little bit of interest. I think it's a little bit too desaturated though. I feel like it kind of makes my lips look a little bit ashy, and I think overall with this palette, I do really like it. So I'm going to hop into my final thoughts on the palette, and then I will wrap up. So if you're done watching the video, you don't care about my final thoughts, you can click off the video now. But if you're interested in hearing my final thoughts, I'm going to wrap up this video with that. So here are my final thoughts on the Byredo MINERALSCAPES palette. Very beautiful packaging, of course. Now, I have to warn you, if you store these in stacks or in shelves with other palettes pressing against it, they will stick to this slightly. It's a similar issue I've run into with Chantecaille packaging where you can't actually stack them because over time this will get sticky and it can actually pull and damage the front. I do wish they fixed that. I don't know what material it is. I'm not a material science major, and overall, I found the formula to be very consistent with Remembrance. So I personally really like the Byredo formula. It is so blendable, but it's not powdery like ABH shadows are. You can get some fallout if you put too much on the brush and just like go into your eyeshadow. Yes, some powder will fall out, but it really strikes a very nice line between being very easy to use and blendable and not completely kicking up dust everywhere. So I would say that these are definitely not dry or firmly pressed, but I wouldn't say that they're creamy either. They are just a very soft, finely milled formula that is easy to pick up with a brush or a finger. And in fact, a lot of the shades in this palette, minus the mattes, I actually feel like they work best with a finger. So if you're the kind of person where you like being able to use your fingers, then you're gonna really appreciate this palette. I also did find that this palette worked really well with both synthetic and natural hair. Most luxury brands I find tend to go one way or another, which can be somewhat annoying, but this one, it's super low maintenance. I feel like any brush will make this palette look good. You don't have to use expensive brushes with this palette, like at all. There are a mix of shimmer, satin, and matte formulas, and Byredo's satin formula is very, very unique to Byredo. It is not really that similar to other satin formulas, so personally, I really enjoy it. And I think that's one of my favorite things about luxury shadows is that each luxury brand has their own way of doing satin eyeshadows, and there's just so many ways to interpret satin eyeshadow that you end up with having like, you could have like 4 luxury palettes from 4 different luxury brands that have satins, but every single one of them ends up looking different on the eyes. It's just really great how versatile all these shades are. The other thing I really like about Byredo is that when they do have more glittery finishes, it's still so soft and easy to work with, and it still picks up so easily on a brush, and it doesn't have any grease or oiliness to it, so it wears really well. They are very flattering to any eyelid texture, any wrinkle texture. You can see here that even with these eyeshadows on, with false lashes on, which make my eyelids even wrinklier, that it's really hard to tell that my eyelids have wrinkles. They're just not really that emphasized by these eyeshadows. The more shimmery shades that are in this palette for me would be this shade right here, which is so pretty. That's one of my favorite shades. This shade here also, and then this shade here is also very glittery, and it's on my inner corner right now, and I just think they're so beautiful. My biggest criticism of this palette really would just be that I feel like the greens and the pale yellows, there are 2 redundant pairs in this palette that I'm not the biggest fan of, especially when you're paying so much for a palette. So if you don't like it when palettes have redundant shades, then obviously that'll be a pet peeve for you. I'm like kind of easygoing about it because Natasha Denona, it's not a Natasha Denona palette unless there are at least 2 redundant shade pairings. So Byredo also having 2 redundant shade pairings, but it being an 18 pan palette, there's still a lot of unique shades to play with. And then lastly, just so that you guys know which shadows are the matte shadows, there's only actually 2 true mattes, and that would be this shade right here and this shade right here. Now, I do find the mattes to be a smidgen drying on my eyelids, so if you have drier eyelids, I would say make sure your eyelids are well prepped. These shadows blend so easily that I would actually recommend using a tackier, more hydrating eye primer if you need it. I actually enjoyed best results with the Fenty Beauty eye primer, which is the tackiest eye primer I've ever tried personally, aside from like straight up glitter glue. And I found that when I used the Rare Beauty one, my shadow got kind of muddy, kind of went everywhere, and I couldn't really build it up to be as intense as I wanted. So that's my personal experience with eye primer. And now I will have to preface, I'm not really the best judgment for wear time. First of all, my eyelids are really dry. Second of all, I do have to spend a lot of time at home. I don't go out that often. I have issues with fatigue, so I'm not sweating my butt off. I'm not working 12-hour shifts. I'm not working like in like a restaurant or in a hospital or anything. So I don't think anybody should ever take my wear time super seriously. That's just not something I'm capable of testing. I do apologize. If you want to know more about eyeshadow wear tests, there are other creators who actually, you know, go out and do things and are productive. But for me, now that I have like wrinkly monolids, which is great, I do definitely pay attention throughout the day to see if any of my eyeshadows sink into those wrinkles and crease. The Byredo shadows didn't move. The longest I was wearing these shadows for was maybe 7 to 8 hours, but no creasing. The eyeshadows literally looked identical to when I first put them on, and even for being a homebody who can't really do much, some formulas will still look worn in. The Byredo shadows literally just look the same. Ever since Remembrance, I do really like treating myself to these. It's just such a fun experience. It's so luxurious, And I also feel like the concepts are really well done. Like the Remembrance palette was based off of art and sculpture, and I felt like you could really see that with the colors. It was boring, but it felt very reminiscent of Renaissance era art. Although I don't actually know if the thing it was based off of was Renaissance era. So if you art history majors out there, please don't come for me. It's been a very, very long time since I took art history. With this, the Mineralogy palette, the interior color scheme definitely is evoking earthier aesthetics and stones. It reminds me of gems when they're first unearthed. So obviously gems don't pop out of the ground looking ready to set into a ring. They have to be polished and cut. When they first come out of the ground, they definitely don't have any of the sparkle or reflectivity they do later, because they don't come, you don't mine gems and they come out with facets, okay? Those have to be added. And so I feel like this palette just is evoking the idea of these raw natural gems and minerals when they are in the earth and humans haven't modified it yet. That's the vibe I'm getting from this, and I actually think it is such a unique concept, and I love it. I love it. With how many eyeshadow palettes we've had that have come out, we have seen gemstone inspired palettes time and time again. But have I seen rocks and minerals inspire a palette? I actually haven't seen very many do that at all. And so I think it's pretty unique in that regard too. I really like that. So I'm excited to see what Byredo continues to do. I feel like their big once a year eyeshadow palette releases have been so great so far. Like again, I still sorely regret missing Kalahari. I feel like that one also had such a tight concept as well. So I really like this palette. I don't know if it's going to still be in stock at the time that I am uploading this. These are limited, and by limited, they do mean limited. They do tend to sell out, not slowly. They don't sell out in a flash, but they're gone after a little bit, and they do not come back. So if you want this palette and you have the means to get it, you should definitely go ahead and get it sooner rather than later. But, you know, obviously I'm not sitting here trying to convince you to buy this. This is a very expensive palette. For me, this is definitely like treat myself, enjoy myself, happy palette. I think it's nice. Lastly, as I said multiple times while working on this video, this is not a palette to use all the shades at once with. This is definitely the palette for the minimalist who likes to use 1 to 3 shades at once. You do that, it'll look good every single time. It does not matter what shades you mix together in this palette. As long as you have like a lighter shade and a darker shade, you will look amazing. And as you noticed, my first 2 looks, I went too maximalist and it looked so muddy. So for the next 3 looks, I really pared it down and it looked way better. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys enjoyed these looks. I was gonna delete the first 2 looks initially, but I decided to leave them in so that you guys could see kind of what I was talking about with the issue with getting a little bit too muddy. So I hope that's alright. I think I was able to sneak in using all of the shades at least once. I do wish I could have done more looks, but I just don't have that kind of time or energy. So, but I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments what you think, especially. I've not actually used anything else from Byredo except Remembrance and Mineralogy. I don't really think I'm ever going to try anything else from Byredo. I've heard their quids are terrible. But if there's anything else from Byredo you think I should check out, you're always welcome to let me know. If you have this palette, let me know how you're liking it. Just let me know your thoughts. I'd love to hear them, and I hope to see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.